On June 12, 2025, the midday sun baked the tarmac of Ahmedabad Airport in India. Air India Flight 171 was ready for a long-haul departure to London. In the cockpit, 56-year-old Captain Sumit Sabharwal was monitoring the systems. He was a veteran of the skies with over 8,000 hours on this specific aircraft type. Beside him sat 32-year-old First Officer Clive Kundur, who was flying the plane on this leg. Behind them, past the business class curtain, passenger Vishwas Ramesh settled into seat 11A. He was seated in the very first row of the economy cabin, right next to the emergency exit door. He likely chose it for the extra legroom, unaware that this specific location would soon dictate his fate. The crew requests pushback and engine start.
Control, Air India 171, ready to push back and start up.
The massive Dreamliner roared down the runway. The pilots called out the speeds, rotated the nose, and the aircraft lifted smoothly into the sky. Everything was perfectly normal, but only for a moment. Just as the wheels left the ground, a mechanical nightmare began. Without any input from the pilots, the fuel control switches for both engines suddenly snapped from the run position to cutoff. Instantly, the fuel supply was severed. The roar of the engines died away. The cockpit voice recorder captured the immediate shock and confusion.
Why did you cut off fuel? I didn't do so.
The aircraft was now a silent glider, barely clearing the airport fence. An emergency wind turbine automatically dropped from the belly to generate power, but the plane was already sinking. In seat 11A, Vishwas Ramesh didn't know about the switches. He only knew that the powerful push of takeoff had vanished, replaced by a terrifying silence and the feeling of falling. Outside his window, the buildings weren't getting smaller, they were rushing up to meet him. Realizing the silence, the crew desperately attempted a restart. 10 seconds after the failure, the flight data recorder shows the switches being moved back to the run position. For a heartbeat, there was hope. The fuel flow resumed. One engine started to spool up, trying to roar back to life. But the other engine choked, unable to arrest its deceleration and recover power.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
A desperate mayday call cracked over the radio. Air traffic control asked for their call sign, but there was no reply. Moments later, the aircraft slammed into a medical college campus just past the runway. The preliminary report paints a harrowing picture of the final seconds. As the aircraft lost altitude, the pilots fought to keep the nose up, but physics was against them. The aircraft was too heavy, too low, and too slow to clear the obstacles ahead. The first contact wasn't with a building. The aircraft's underbelly clipped a series of trees and sheared off the top of an incineration chimney inside the Army Medical Corps compound. Momentum carried the machine forward until it met the first building. The tail section, along with the right landing gear, pierced the upper wall and became completely embedded in the concrete. The impact was so violent that the vertical stabilizer snapped off and was thrown clear of the wreckage, while the rest of the fuselage continued its deadly path forward. Now, without its tail, the aircraft was disintegrating in motion. As it plowed through the complex, the massive wings struck concrete structures on either side. Both engines were ripped from their pylons. The wings shattered, scattering debris and fuel, stripping the aircraft down to just a metal tube. The fuselage itself could not withstand the immense structural stress. As the wings were torn away, the main body of the aircraft snapped open. The breakup was catastrophic, separating the burning center section from the forward cabin. The nose of the aircraft, containing the flight deck, carried the most momentum. Severed from the rest of the wreckage and stripped of its landing gear, the cockpit slid across the ground, scraping forward until it finally ground to a halt far ahead of the main inferno. But amidst this total destruction, one specific fragment of the fuselage followed a different path. The forward section of the economy cabin, where Vishwas Ramesh was clinging to seat 11A, broke away during the impact. Instead of being crushed or consumed by fire, this section fell onto the lower floor of a damaged building. This random fracture in the fuselage became a lifeboat, shielding Vishwas from the worst of a crash. Inside that broken metal shell, Vishwas Ramesh was alive. He unbuckled his belt, stepped through a hole in the aircraft, and walked away from the apocalypse. But his miraculous escape stands in stark contrast to the devastation around him. As the dust settled, the rest of the site was engulfed in flames. The human cost was staggering. Of the 242 people on board, 241 lost their lives in the inferno. But the tragedy extended beyond the fuselage. On the ground, another 19 people perished due to the impact. The total death toll reached 260. The preliminary report leaves us with a haunting mystery. The switches moved on their own, defying the pilot's commands. Was it a software ghost, a short circuit, or something else? No cause for the switch movement was given in the report. The crash remains under investigation.